My laptop says it's 2 o'clock, so we'll make a start. The first item on the agenda is election of chair. Can I have nominations, please, for the election of chair for this meeting? Can I have a seconder, please? Are there any further nominations? In that case, I declare that Councillor Wells be elected chair for the subcommittee meeting this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Item 2 on the agenda is members' interests. Do members have any interests that they wish to declare? Councillor Jordan, Councillor Clark? No, and none from me either. Item 3, my introduction. Welcome all to the meeting. My name is Councillor Nick Wells. I'm chair of the licensing subcommittee hearing. And before we start, can I remind you please of a few housekeeping arrangements. If you wish to speak, please indicate that you wish to do so. To enable your microphone, you press the middle button, please, which will turn green, and then the microphone will light up red at the top. Please also remember to press the middle button again when you finish speaking. It's particularly important that all members use their microphones so that the audio can be picked up for the live stream. And in the event of the fire alarm sounding during the meeting, please stand and follow the meeting administrator to the fire evacuation point outside the building. Thank you. The meeting is being filmed on the Council's YouTube channel for live and subsequent broadcasts. The whole of the meeting will be filmed except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed to have considered to be consented to being filmed. And by entering the meeting, you're also consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and training purposes. Thank you. So in the room with me today, here at Pathfinder House, we have Councillor Clark on my right and Councillor Jordan on my left, members of the subcommittee. We have Luke Elford, Council's legal advisor, to my right, and we have Democratic Services representation. I'm now going to ask the officers from the licensing team to introduce herself. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sarah Marden. I'm the licensing officer for this case for Huntingdonshire District Council.
Thank you. And can I now ask, excuse me, those representing the applicant, which is the Home Office in Immigration Enforcement, to please now introduce yourself and state your name and your capacity in which you're here to represent the applicant. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Michael Whitten-Serrick. I'm a Chief Immigration Officer for Immigration Enforcement.
Thank you very much. And next, can I ask those representing the applicant to please introduce themselves, stating your name and the capacity in which you are here to represent the applicant. Thank you.
My name is James Rankin, and I am looking after the premises licence holders today. I've got next to me Mr. Ahil, and next to him Mr. Shohid, and Mr. Shohid is the son of the previous licensee and previous DPS.
Thank you. So in terms of responsible authorities, I believe we've got nobody present from responsible authorities. Those consulted were PC Claire Metcalf, Cambridgeshire Constabulary, Chris Acortt from the Modern Slavery and Human Trafficking team, and also Trading Standards. Thank you. Is there anybody else that I haven't covered for the meeting today? No, thank you. Moving on then to item 4, which is the licensing committee subcommittee procedure. You will have received within the hearing papers that were circulated to you a copy of the licensing subcommittee procedure. The hearing will commence under that procedure. Any representations that have been made should be relevant to the 4 licensing objectives, which are the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. Do any parties present have any questions or clarification at this stage, just related to the procedure only? Any questions?
No questions.
Thank you. Moving on then to item 5, which is the hearing. I'll now invite the licensing officer to present the application. Thank you.
Okay. So Huntingdonshire District Council, as the licensing authority, has received an application to review a premises licence from a Home Office Immigration Enforcement Team in their capacity as the responsible authority under the Licensing Act 2003. The premises licence is specifically for the premises at number 1 Longsands Parade in St Neots, PE 191SU, and this restaurant is known as Kaizan's. The application was received on the 5th of July 2024, and as required under the Licensing Act 2003, notice of the application was advertised on the Council's website and by blue notices displayed at or near the premises from the 5th of July for a period of 28 days, which ended on the 1st of August 2024. A copy of the full application for the review, along with the supporting documentation, is attached as Appendix A and Appendix B. And the current premises licence for Kaizan's is at Appendix C. By way of background, the premises licence number HDC/PRE00377 for number 1 Longsands Parade, St Neots, was first issued in November 2005. At that time, the premises were traded as the Curry Spice, and the premises licence holder was a Mr. RM. He's not relevant here, it was just for information. In April 2015, the premises licence was transferred to Mr. Abdul Shohid. At the same time, an application to vary the DPS was also received, and the DPS is also Mr. Abdul Shohid. In July 2020, we received an application to vary the premises licence. The variation requested was to include off sales in the activity of for the licence. No other changes were requested, and this application was granted as applied for with no representations. Again, during this period of time, we were notified of a change of trading name from Curry Spice to Kaizan's. So it's been trading as Kaizan's since July 2020. The next activity is on 2nd of June 2024, when the Home Office immigration officers attended the premises. We received the application for review on the 5th of July. And on the 11th of July, we subsequently received an application from the premises licence holder to transfer the licence to a Mr. M. Raymond. This application, after some conversations on the telephone with him, was withdrawn on the 17th of July, as it appears Mr. Raymond had not been made aware that the review application had been made against the premises licence. A further application to transfer the licence followed on the 18th of July, again along with an application to vary the DPS. In this case, the applicant was Mr. Ahil, I'm sorry. Again, following another conversation, it was determined that Mr. Ahil was aware of the review application taking place, and Mr. Ahil on the 1st of August became the new premises licence holder and the DPS for the premises. Let's see. So during the period for representations, 2 valid representations in support of the application have been received from Cambridgeshire Constabulary in their role as responsible authority. These representations have been attached in their entirety at Appendix D. Not all matters raised within the representation may be relevant matters for the consideration under the Licensing Act 2003. A person who has submitted a relevant representation is entitled to address the licensing subcommittee at the hearing and ask questions of any other party appearing at the hearing. The licensing authority must carry out its functions under the Act with a view to promoting the licensing objectives. Each objective has equal importance. The objectives are the prevention of crime and disorder, the prevention of public safety, the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. The licensing subcommittee must also have regard to its statement of licensing policy and the statutory guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003. And the Human Rights Act 1988, sorry. The Council must fulfil its obligations under Section 17 of the Crime and Disorder Act 1998 to do all that is reasonable it can to prevent crime and disorder in its district. In making its decision, this application must be determined on its individual merits, having regard to the representations and supporting documents included as part of the report, along with additional information considered relevant at the hearing. As part of the decision process, the subcommittee is required to give its reasons for any decision it arrives at. When the licensing authority considers that action under this authority, under its statutory powers, is appropriate, it may take the following steps: modify the conditions of the premises licence, which includes adding new or alteration or omission of existing conditions, for example, by reducing the hours of opening or by requiring door staff at particular times. Excluding a licensable activity from the scope of the licence, remove the designated premises supervisor, or suspend a licence for a period not exceeding 3 months, revoke the licence, or take no action. Any decision made by the licensing subcommittee must be reasonable and proportionate and promote the licensing objectives.
Thank you, Sarah. Do any members of the subcommittee have questions for the licensing officer?
I do.
Councillor Jordan.
Thank you. It's just with the paperwork, given that we're here to hear this today, was any information given about how employment should be taking place on the premises? So did they have any information about illegal immigrants or employing anybody or hours that they can employ? Do you include that in any paperwork? Thank you.
That's not something we generally deal with. Again, that's usually something the Home Office would deal with within their normal remit, I think.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? No. Does the applicant have any questions for the licensing officer?
No, I don't.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's just a matter of correction. I believe that the visit was the 7th of June, not the 6th of June.
Thank you for that. Okay, and does the premises licence holders representative have any questions for the licensing officer?
No.
Okay, and moving on then to item 5B, I'll now ask the applicant for the review, the Home Office Immigration Enforcement, to address the subcommittee for no more than 20 minutes, please, and to call any witnesses if relevant. Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to first confirm that all the committee members have had time to read the submission pack. Wonderful. Okay. I don't propose to read through the full pack and drag out the hearing, but I will make a couple of key points before I summarise the case. Immigration enforcement do not just drive around looking for businesses to target. We are intelligence-led, and there has to be significant concerns for us to take action on incoming intelligence. We do not routinely refer to seek a licence review, but we do so in selected cases where we have heightened concerns. In this particular case, our concerns are that we found 3 illegal workers all admitting to working at Kazans, but possibly more concern is that the manager spoken to on the day seemed to have a lack of awareness as to how to check an employee's immigration status prior to employing them. All that said, we recognise that our role is to bring those concerns to your attention as the local licensing authority. This is your area, and it's you that answer to the electorate and represent the interests of the local people and businesses. So, Immigration Enforcement visited Kazan's Indian restaurant on the 7th of June 2024. This enforcement visit was conducted on intelligence received stating that there were a number of illegal migrants working at Kazan's Indian restaurant in St Neots. So this visit took place at around 8:30 in the evening of a Friday evening. On entering, officers encountered 9 members of staff, establishing a third of the employees were working either in breach of their conditions or had no permission to work at all. It was also noted how quiet the business was for a Friday night, with only 2 customers and minimal takeaway orders. Now, of the 3 individuals identified as working illegally, 2 had no permission to work at all. The third could work, but only in the field of construction. Any other work would have been in a breach of their conditions imposed by their visa. As he'd been working behind the counter dressed as a waiter, he was deemed to be working in breach, and as such, this individual had his visa curtailed. All 3 had illegal working interviews conducted, where they separately admitted to working at the restaurant. 2 of the 3 stated how much they had been paid weekly, which appears to be significantly below the national average, the minimum average, although they do appear to be getting some accommodation for their employment. Additional to those illegal working interviews, the manager, Mr. Mohammed Sohid, who I believe is the director, was also spoken to. He appeared to be unaware of how to conduct a right-to-work check, which is an area of concern, but did indicate that it was his father that was responsible for the hiring of the staff. To note, a civil penalty for the illegal workers has been submitted, but at this stage it is still being considered. However, should a penalty be issued for the 3 illegal workers, that would result in a potential fine of £135,000, £45,000 per illegal worker. Now, contrary to what many people think, it's actually quite easy to verify whether someone is allowed to work in the UK. In fact, if they do have permission, then verification can take a matter of minutes. And even if an employer chooses not to use the employee verification service, it's not difficult to establish a reasonable statutory excuse by ensuring that documentation is seen and copied. I think it's important to highlight that the intelligence that led to this visit was actually received in late March. So this would demonstrate that the employment of the illegal workers has not been over a short period of time or been caused by a short-term event. Now, the Home Office does not wish to be involved in unnecessarily restricting genuine community services, such as small shops and restaurants. However, as highlighted, there are very serious concerns over the way this business was being run on our visit in June. 3 illegal workers were found at the business with a civil penalty referral being issued, and management appearing not to have limited knowledge on how to conduct basic employment checks. Immigration enforcement would ask that the premises licence is revoked. Merely remedying the existing situation by imposition of an additional condition or suspension of is insufficient to act as a deterrent to the licence holder and other premises licence holders from employing illegal workers and facilitating disqualified immigrants to work illegally. So unless I can answer any specific questions, I don't propose to take any more of your time, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Do any members of the subcommittee have questions for the applicant, please? Do any officers present licensing have questions for the applicant? And sorry, legal representative has a question.
Just a quick point of clarification, if I may. I think I heard you say that a civil penalty was being considered, and then I think I heard you say it had been submitted. Which is it, please?
A civil penalty referral notice has been submitted to the civil penalties team, and they are considering it at the moment.
Thank you. Does the premises licence holders representative have any questions for the office, please?
No questions.
Thank you. So I will now ask the premises licence holder representative to address the subcommittee for no more than 20 minutes and to call any witnesses if relevant. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can I explain who the persons present are? So Mohammed Shahid is the son of the former licence holder. That was Abdul Shahid. And together they purchased these premises some 9 years ago and ran it without incident. They have a lease, and the lease is in Mohammed's name, not his father's name. Now, we have to accept that what happened and what was seen on the 7th of February happened. And I have to say this, that the checks that they performed were merely perfunctory checks. They were not nearly as detailed as required. What was thought, and it doesn't really matter whether it's Abdul's fault or whether it's his son's fault. The son works for the NHS, diagnosing people with ADHD in London, in Walthamstow, at a hospital there, and was visiting these premises at weekends. He has 3 small children, but wasn't there full time. That didn't matter so much because the DPS was his father. Father is older than one would have expected for a restaurateur. And it is perfectly clear that the checks that were conducted, in other words, the biometric residence permit, the existence of a national insurance number, and the existence of a permanent address, was insufficient. And yes, it is perfectly simple as a procedure to check whether somebody has the right to work or not. You simply go on to the employer's checking service, you need a share code, and you access the facility that way, and you can find out pretty quickly whether somebody has the right to work or not. Now, obviously, I hear what the officer says in relation to intelligence, but these are the facts relating to the 3 people that were found to be working illegally. Now, so far as the first one is concerned, Mr. Deb, it's possible that there's a statutory excuse. Mr. Deb is a friend of Mohammed. He would come at weekends occasionally. Occasionally, he would receive money, and occasionally he would sleep above the premises, and occasionally he would show people to their tables and work behind the till, and so on and so forth. But in order for the legislation to bite, what you have to show is that there's some obligation. And on the facts of that, and there are various decided cases on this that I needn't trouble you with, it's insufficient. Even though money was on occasion given to Mr. Deb, it's insufficient to get home on the fact that he was working. So there is a statutory excuse there. And whether it's successful or not is for another time, another place, when the civil penalties are heard before another tribunal. And insofar as Mr. Khan is concerned, the facts of the matter are these, that he applied for asylum on the 25th of March last year. And the act of applying for asylum, as I understand the legislation, is that you're allowed to work without restriction on the numbers of hours. He was refused his application for asylum on the 17th of April 2024. So his right to work with no restriction on the hours was removed as of that time. So as a matter of fact, he was only working illegally for 2 months. And you may think, well, that's a distinction without a difference. And insofar as Mr. Mir is concerned, the third individual, he had only been employed 6 days before the visit by the officials on the 7th of February. The premises are in the process of being sold. And you've heard Ms. Marden make reference to Mr. Rahman. Mr. Rahman was interested in buying these premises back in June of this year. he expressed an interest then. In January of this year. And in February, he wished to buy them and he placed a deposit down on the condition that these premises were taken off the market, and they were indeed taken off the market. And then, for various personal reasons that I needn't trouble you with, Mr. Rahman had an aged mother who sadly passed away. He didn't pursue his application to complete. He has now pursued it, and completion is due in 3 weeks' time on the 10th of September 2024. Those facts are important because this whole business of selling the premises occurred well before the visit by the Home Office officials. I say that for this reason, because often, as a last-ditch attempt to save a license, you sometimes see operators say, well, look, I'm in the process of selling, and it's an afterthought. This isn't an afterthought. It has been in the minds of Mr. Shahid and his son and Mr. Rahman for some time. But Mr. Rahman, when he applied for the transfer of the license and the variation of the DPS on the 17th of July, was unaware of the review proceedings. And understandably, he got cold feet. He hasn't withdrawn from completion. That is due to take place in 3 weeks' time. But we had to decide what had to be done beforehand. Now, Ms. Marden came to put the blue notice up, and a conversation took place. And I hope that I'm not dumping Ms. Marden in it, because the advice that she gave was absolutely correct, that Mr. Shahid should look at the question of transferring the license to somebody else. That's precisely the advice that I would have given. So she was absolutely correct. And that is where Mr. Ahil comes in. And Mr. Ahil is 32 years in the business. He is the uncle of Mr. Shahid, Mohammed Shahid. And prior to coming to these premises, was the manager and DPS of premises in Horsham, the Raj Kumar, which he ran for 3 years. Prior to that, at Northampton of the Taste of India, and the list goes on. He was there for 2 years. Manager and the person in overall control and responsible for the question of compliance as well. So the question is this: what do we do in the interim? Because you don't want to have the license in the hands of people that clearly you may come to the conclusion don't have the right to have this license. You may think, well, the person that we want to be in control of these premises pending sale is somebody that's at arm's length and has total control over the premises himself. And he does. So this is the position, that for this period, and since the 18th of July, when he was granted the license by transfer, and when the DPS was varied to have his name there, he has been in total control of these premises. But whatever he says is correct. Now, the first thing he did was check that the 6 employees who are left are indeed people who have the right to work and reside in this country. All 6 are British UK passport holders, so there is no difficulty there. If, in the unusual circumstances that somebody is taken on in the forthcoming 3 weeks, then he knows precisely what to do in terms of checking and how that is done, because he's done it before at other premises. As has already been indicated, it's a simple, straightforward procedure. And you may think, well, how do we satisfy ourselves that Mr. Shahid has nothing to do with these premises? There is nothing to prevent you imposing a condition in these terms, that neither Abdul Shahid nor Mohammed Shahid shall play any part in the day-to-day running of these premises. day-to-day running and management you can put as well. So that means that for this brief period up until the 10th of September, total control rests in the hands of Mr. Arhill. Now, I know that you will be directed to the DCMS guidance. It's guidance only. The High Court often says this. It's guidelines, not tram lines. You're not bound hand and foot by it, but you must have regard to it. And this is what the DCMS guidance says, that in relation, specifically in relation to unlawful working, at 11.28, paragraph 11.28, it's envisaged that the licensing authorities, the police, the Home Office, Immigration Enforcement, and other law enforcement agencies, which are responsible authorities, will use the review procedures effectively to deter such activities and crime. Where reviews arise and the licensing authority determines that the crime prevention objective is being undermined through the premises being used to further crimes, it's expected that revocation of the license, even in the first instance, should be seriously considered. It's not saying you have to revoke. It's saying you must give serious consideration to it. Now, reference, I think, has been made by the police to the case of Hanif. And in fact, there is even at page 51 of your bundle, a synopsis of the case of East Lindsey District Council and Abu Hanif trading as Zara's restaurant. Now, can I just say this in relation to Hanif? Because Hanif is not authoritative for saying, well, whenever you're given a case that involves an illegal worker, you're compelled to revoke the license. It doesn't say that at all. Hanif argued before the licensing subcommittee that the licensing objective of the prevention of crime and disorder was not engaged because there was a civil penalty being considered, very much the case here. There was no criminal prosecution, and what was attempted, hopelessly, if I may say so, what was attempted by Mr. Hanif was an argument to say, well, no, the crime prevention objective is not engaged because it's a civil penalty and there was no criminal prosecution. Astonishingly, that argument succeeded in front of a district judge. And the local council, East Lindsey, were so exercised by that decision that correctly they went to the High Court to challenge it. And the High Court said, yes, of course, the crime prevention objective is engaged. So Hanif is authority on that discrete point only. It's not authority for saying every time you have an application for review proceedings that you're compelled to revoke. You don't have to do that. And I should also say this, that in Hanif, the license was revoked by the licensing subcommittee. In Hanif was continuing as the operator of the premises, and there was no sale of the premises contemplated. So you'll see instantly that there's a difference on the facts between Hanif and the current case. So the question is, what do we do? What's the appropriate and proportionate response to this? We have to obviously send out a message. The answers contained, I would suggest, in paragraph 1120 of the DCMS guidance, which says this, that in deciding which of these powers, and those are the powers that Ms. Marden read out, whether to revoke, suspend, remove, etc., in deciding which of these powers to invoke, it's expected that licensing authorities should, so far as possible, seek to establish the cause or causes of the concerns that the representations identify. The remedial action taken should generally be directed at these causes and should always be no more than an appropriate and proportionate response to address the causes of concern that instigated the review. So the causes of concern were that Mr. Shahid and his father didn't perform these checks and that they should have done that. And therefore, we would like the license revoked. Now, that would be a sound argument if Mr. Shahid and his son were continuing to operate these premises, but they're not. The license has been transferred out, and there is a new DPS, albeit temporary. So the cause or causes of the representations have been addressed. And what then, in these circumstances, is the appropriate and proportionate response to that? Deciding whether you act appropriately and proportionately requires you to look at any lesser steps that you could take. Is there a lesser step short of revocation? What you could do is you could suspend the license. That would send out a message. You can do that for up to 3 months. And you could do it in circumstances where you're sending a deterrent message out to other people within your district who are thinking of ignoring the law in the way that Mr. Shahid and his son did. That, coupled with the imposition of the condition, as I've outlined, should, we suggest, allow you to come to this conclusion, that in the circumstances of this case, where there is a new purchaser coming in who's due to complete in 3 weeks' time, we will send the message out that we will not tolerate this sort of behaviour, suspend the licence, the sale can take place, Mr. Rahman can apply for the transfer of the licence and the DPS, and everybody should be able to walk away from this woeful set of circumstances with the lasting impression that justice was done. Now, I'm conscious of the fact that I've taken up too much time. If there's anything that I can help you with, or that Mr. Ahil can help you with, I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. We wanted to hear a thorough explanation of where the current situation and indeed the way forward that's envisaged, and so grateful for that. So from that then, do members of the subcommittee have questions for the licence holders representative? Are the licence holders themselves do they wish to make additional comments?
Yes, so
Yeah.
Mr. Ahil, you've taken over these premises and you have been in total charge of these premises since the 18th of July.
18th of July.
All right. Now, you tell us what your duties are.
Managing the place. If we take someone new on, then I have to do a check online with a share code or a biometric card number, and I get a printout, and that tells me, and I take a photocopy of everything, and I keep it in a file for them.
And you're living above the premises.
I am living above the premises. We're open 6 days a week. We're closed on a Monday, so that's the day I take a day off.
Now, the question is this. Insofar as Mr. Shahid's, Mohammed Shahid's continuing involvement and his father's continuing involvement, what is your position in terms of control of these premises?
Up until the completion, it's all down to me. They have nothing to do with the business.
Thank you. Anything further from yourself or Mr. Shoaib? Yep.
I imagine Mr. Shahid wanted to offer an apology.
I would like to apologise for what's happened with not doing the checks. Obviously, my dad, he's in his late 50s, and his English isn't his first language, so he wasn't up to speed with doing the online checks. And now that I've appointed my uncle to take care of these things, hopefully he'll, for the next 3 weeks until completion, he'll make a good outcome of it.
Thank you. So Councillor Jordan has a question now.
Thank you. Mr. Abbott, that's it, sorry. You say you've owned other premises. You've worked in other premises, but this is the first one you've owned. Will you, right, okay, so you'll be managing it. How many other premises have you managed?
Excuse me, I just ask you to press the green button so we can hear
Yeah.
you. So thank you.
Recently, within the last 5 years, I worked as a manager. Even back in the days, I worked as a manager in different premises.
Thank you.
It's my fault for not making it clear. So Mr. Ahil is not buying these premises. Mr. Rahman is buying the premises. He's the caretaker and man on the spot.
I want the clarification about the relationship between yourself and the other gentleman. Or which, you said he was the uncle?
Mr. Ahil is the uncle of Mr. Shade.
I just want that clarified, just so I understand. Who is who in all of this?
I am related to his mother. I am a cousin of his mother. So she's a cousin sister of mine.
All right, but this is the elephant in the room. If Mohammed Shahid tells you to do something, what's the response?
No. Simple answer.
Councillor Clark.
Yes. You're obviously related to the Shohabs. Have you ever worked for these people before, back to 92? Your family?
Never. I've never worked for the family within that time. I've worked for other people, but not for the family, no.
Can I just ask for, if you would bear with me just to go through again what the story was with the proposal for Mr. Rahman to take on the license and then that falling through, given that Mr. Rahman is ultimately going to take on the premises. What was the trap that sort of
So
occurred there?
Mr. Rahman, who is buying the premises, was unaware of the review proceedings because papers had only recently, prior to his application, been served. So when he put in his application for transfer and to be the DPS as a prelude to the completion, there was a conversation, helpful conversation with Sarah Martin, who indicated that there were review proceedings. And it was at that moment that he took a back seat. It doesn't mean that he's withdrawn from the sale. It just means that we all hope that there's going to be a license in existence, because without it, there isn't a sale.
So it was just his lack of understanding of the process, basically,
Yes.
that sort of caused the problem. Yeah, thank you.
So will you manage it on his behalf once the sale goes through, or will he manage it himself?
So he will manage it himself. He is a man with extensive experience. He will be bringing an entire new team with him. All of the staff will be his staff, but he will be the person running the premises. There's no objection to him as the DPS and no objection to him as the transferee.
We will give you the opportunity to ask your question very shortly. Just want to make sure that the councillors have had a full possibility of answering.
Sorry to
questions.
harp on about this, but obviously it's very important as with licence holders. And there's nothing against him, no immigration issues in the past or anything like that, that you can bring to our attention. There's been none.
And so just to pursue, is Mr. Rahman related at all to your family, or is he an acquaintance from previous times?
So the business was advertised on Nationwide Businesses back in just over a year ago. Mr. Rahman approached Nationwide Businesses, came forward, looked at the property, he liked it, and then in January we got solicitors involved, and then in February he put down a deposit. But since February his mother passed away, so it's just been a delay. And then obviously we've had this immigration thing, so now he's taken a bit step back. But we're
importantly not related.
yeah, oh no, we're not related at all. No.
Thank you for that. Any further questions from councillors at all? Councillor Clark? All done. Okay, thank you. So officers, do you, that's to say, Sarah, do you have any questions for the licence holder's representative or the licence holder? You don't. Okay, thank you. So, and now, sorry, to legal. I keep hearing the legal has a question. Yeah.
Just very briefly, the sale. How is this being done? Is it a lease? Is it a purchase of the freehold, leasehold? What's happening there, please?
It's a lease.
Yeah, it's a lease. Do you want to know details about the lease, or?
Is the lease for what? Is the lease contingent on this premises license being retained?
So the lease was, we took on the property in 2015. That's when the lease was granted for a period of 20 years. There's currently 11, I think just over 11 years remaining on the lease. So the new buyer is buying it with the 11-year term, but it's an open lease where it can be extended after 11 years.
And is the purchase contingent on this license remaining?
Completion is due on the 10th of September. Is completion dependent upon there being a license in existence?
Oh, yes, that's correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Moving on then to the applicant. Do you have any questions for the premises licence holder? Thank you.
Yeah, it's just more just to clarify a few points. Regarding the first individual within the pack, you said was a friend, and you mentioned about obligation and control. That's for issuing civil penalties. That's not establishing whether somebody. Okay. It was just something was said that was incorrect. Okay. In that case, I will, in light of the impending sale, I would support a suspension up until the end of the sale, where the new person takes over.
Thank you for that. Right, we now move on to written representations from anybody who is not present at the meeting this afternoon, which are set out in your agenda pack. Has anybody have any comments on the written representations? Members of the subcommittee? No. Officers present? No. And the applicant? No. And the premises licence holders representative? Anything on the written representations you wish to raise at all?
Other than the slavery matters, matters which raised my eyebrows, and I imagine raised Mr. Elford's eyebrows. This doesn't come anywhere close to modern day slavery or trafficking.
Okay, noted.
I think the Home Office.
Sorry.
Yes, please.
The only other thing that, if I could request be considered, was on the licence, although if we're going down the suspension route, were conditions that if we were to attend the address in the future that we could get access to any documentation on anybody that was working there on site, or if it's kept off site, they have to give us details of the person who's looking after them.
Okay, so members of the subcommittee, we've all noted the written representations, we've read the documentation. Yep, okay. Right. So now before we move on to item 6, which is exclusion of the press and the public, the subcommittee will now retire to deliberate. Council's legal advisor will provide legal advice and to record the subcommittee's decision. We don't know how long this deliberations will take. Our decision will be sent out to you all in writing as soon as possible. If you do want to wait around, you're welcome to do so. The choice is yours. However, it may take us some time to come to our conclusions. It typically takes quite a while. So all parties would have a right of appeal to the Magistrates' Court within 21 days of the decision. Luke, is there anything you need to add here?
No, Chair.
Thank you. So that leads me to thank you all for your attendance this afternoon, and we will now move on to item 6, which is exclusion of the press and the public. And members, are you happy to exclude press and public? Councillor Clark? Yes. Yes, thank you.